Hello all and welcome, and I am the MGTOW Philosopher, and in this episode I would like to talk about the television show Law Order SVU, which stands for Sexual Victims Unit. Now, some of you may or may not know, this show is perhaps one of the most cucked, most pathetic social justice warrior, feminist, trope, piece of crap TV shows to exist in all of TVdom. It is the worst. This show essentially promotes the idea, erroneous idea, that all men are evil. Men are evil! Men are evil! Of course, women are perfect. Women are perfect. I think maybe one or two episodes in the entire, 18-year history of this show has had a female perpetrator. Otherwise, it's all men. Now, of course, we all know that women are just as depraved and sick as men. Your egalitarians will even tell you that, because men and women are equal, right? Well, they sure are in the depraved area. So you would think that this show would depict things equally, since we all know that women are just as responsible for sexual crimes as men. They commit just as many with just as much frequency, just perhaps of a different type because of their lack of physical strength. But does this show represent that reality? Oh no, it does not. It represents men as almost always the evil people of the world, and women, well, they are always the victim. Women are the perpetual victim. Men are the perpetual victimizers. And this episode is no different. But what struck me about it was that the man in this episode started out as the victim. And I knew right away what was going to happen. So let's start out by seeing what happens on this episode. And if you know this show and you're familiar with social justice warriors, so here we are with the lead-in scene, and you have Finn and Carisi walking down the hallway following a plain-clothes female black officer, of course. You need that diversity hire in there. You need diversity in this show. You couldn't have a white officer and not a woman. Oh no, every scene has to have a woman in it, of course. The show is so progressive. So here come Finn and Carisi, following the officer. And, of course, they get into the hotel room with the obligatory giant blood stain, which, of course, lets you know that some horrible crime has been committed. And Finn is like, has his hands up. He's like, where's the person that created the blood? Where's the crime? Why are we here? And the diversity hire black female police officer says, take a look in that ice bucket, would you? And so the top comes off the ice bucket, and Finn looks inside. He takes a short moment to figure out what he's looking at. And then he figures it out. Balls! It's balls! Or should I be more accurate and say it's testicles? Yes, that giant blood stain on the bed is from a man having his testicles cut off, and they've been thrown in an ice bucket. Of course, the perpetrator did not throw them in the ice bucket. The female diversity hire black woman threw them in the ice bucket, and that's good thinking, because that'll preserve the balls, and hopefully they can be reattached, which is actually impossible, because once they're cut off, they're just medical waste. Now, at this point, I have to say I already knew who the perpetrator was. The perpetrator was whoever had their balls cut off, because in this show, if you're a man, you're the bad guy. I automatically knew, and I automatically knew what the script was going to be. I knew the moment. The balls were in the jar. I knew that the guy somehow had wronged a woman, and he was the real bad guy, and he had done something bad, because in this show, the man is always the bad guy. Even when he's the victim, he's really the bad guy, and he did something. He did something to merit being harmed. While the woman, of course, she's always the victim, and she's never the bad guy, and she never does anything to merit being harmed. That's how this show works. Now fast forward a little bit, and the genius, who is Finn, spots a blood trail. Hey, look, Carisi, there's a blood trail on the floor. Let's follow it. We found a door with bloodstains on it. Let's take a look, shall we? And there is your bad guy. How do I know he's the bad guy? Because he's a guy, and he's on this show. I knew immediately this is your guy, and he just happens to be alive. Great, now we can castigate him later on and put him on trial. And now we fast forward a little bit to the hospital with the two fat, ugly land whale female police officers, Mariska Hargitay and whoever this blonde chick is, both blobs, both single land whale mothers, of course, and the diversity female hire. As you see, there's not a male doctor in sight. So we have the kinky-haired, trying to appear not so black by lightening her hair with some blonde highlights, female doctor who makes a very crass comment. We have the unfortunate recipient of an amateur gonadectomy. I wonder how it would come across if a male doctor was treating a female who had had her clitoris cut off, and he said, we have the recipient of an amateur clitorectomy. There would be an uproar, all the feminists would be screaming, and people would be very angry. But she makes such a crass, off-the-cuff joke about a guy who just had his balls cut off, and so funny. Now let's fast forward again, and this is your first female perpetrator. How do you know? Because she's on the show, and because she appears to be nice and sweet. And this is the woman who called the police and let them know that she heard a man screaming in the adjacent room. So she called 911. So immediately, by the way, I'm letting you know, this is spoiler alert. I'm assuming all of you have seen this show because it was on already, and I'm talking to you about it. If you don't want to know what happened, well, you shouldn't be watching. So this is one of your perpetrators, and of course, she's going to be portrayed as a good, wonderful girl. She felt guilty after the fact, so she called the police to get this guy help. That's how you know she's one of the perpetrators. Because if a man has been hurt, the woman who hurt him, she must be some kind of angel who was abused, who was used, who was treated horribly. And so, of course, being a woman, she can't be bad or evil. And after the fact, she felt bad about what happened. And if it was a man, of course, they wouldn't feel bad and they wouldn't be being portrayed as somebody who feels remorse after the fact. But of course, if it's a woman, even if she is some type of perpetrator, she was pushed to do it. It was an eye for an eye. She's not some kind of sicko or depraved person. Oh no, only men are like that. So this is the setup for later on to get 2 of the 3 perpetrators off. That's right, there's 3 women who cut this guy's balls off, or participated anyway, and 2 of them were actual accessories, but they of course got off scot-free. This is number 1. And here we have number 2. Perpetrator number 2 is also supposed to be an accessory, meaning she supposedly had nothing to do with the guy, not directly anyway, to do with getting his balls cut off, meaning she's not the one who supposedly held the knife or anything. No, she's just an accessory. And she, of course, gives some cock and bull story because it was her credit card that was used to rent the room where the guy was found. Yeah, she's some brilliant mastermind criminal, wasn't she? She rented the room where the guy who got his balls cut off was found. And then she goes on to lamely state that, oh, geez, my credit card's been stolen. I haven't seen it since I went to Costco. And, of course, she looks all innocent and all that. Of course, and later on we find out that she's not so innocent, but she's been wronged. Of course, because she's a woman, and a woman would never do anything evil unless she'd been pushed to do it. And she was actually the real victim. Oh, no. A woman do something wrong or evil? No. Not without some kind of valid reason. No. And on to perpetrator number 3 and the ball cutter. And here is perpetrator number 3. Ugly broad, tattoos, looks horrible. Basically, she hit the wall at light speed. So you know that she's the one that's been the most damaged by this guy. Yes, this follows a very typical trend of the victimhood scenario. The 2 accessories they weren't as used and abused as this woman, and she, being the one who was the actual ball cutter, is the one who was most used and most abused. That's right, women never do anything evil or harmful to another human being unless they have been damaged by men, damaged by the system which is controlled by men. They're only pushed to do these kind of things. They don't do them on their own without any kind of push from a man. Oh no. And right here, this is your ball cutter. And as you'll find out, she had justification. Yeah. Just on a side note, gentlemen, this is your enemy, this big, fat, dough-faced single mom who is consequently a diehard feminist and hates men. Onward, shall we? And here is where the genius detectives find out that all three of these women who supposedly barely knew each other, two of them knew each other, one didn't, they're tangentially connected, actually all went to the same school. And of course, right then, I knew before this pretty much, that the guy, he was some kind of school teacher, and they were his students at one time, and he was a very young teacher, still had the sexual juices flowing, 22, 23-year-old teacher, 16, 17-year-old female students. You can figure it out. And of course, it's right here where okay, he's the bad guy. But I already knew he was the bad guy at the beginning because he's a guy on this show. Every time it's a guy on this show and there's some kind of guy involved and he looks like the victim, he's not the victim. He's your perpetrator. And he brought about, through his own bad actions, the assault that was done upon him by a woman. Because women never, ever, ever do anything wrong unless they're pushed to do so by a man. He's the real evildoer. Look at this crappy Photoshop picture with the 48-year-old guy who got his balls cut off, face superimposed onto somebody else's body. It looks like something a kid would do. By cutting off someone's head from one picture and pasting it onto somebody else's body. Oh, gee, the big reveal. The guy who had his balls cut off was the faculty advisor of the three girls who were involved in somehow him having his balls cut off. Do you see the setup yet? Well, of course you see the setup because it's very obvious. And of course the obvious setup is this. He raped those girls, don't you know? Because that's the most horrible crime he could do to a girl. Of course, short of killing them. And of course, since they're still alive, we have the de facto lesser crime of rape, which he must have committed because he is a man. And he had his balls cut off, don't you know? And there's no way, shape, or form that any woman would cut his balls off without having some good reason. Oh no, there's no sicko, depraved broads out there who just do things to men for no reason. He gave them a reason, don't you know? And later on, you have all three of them in the same cage, of course, bickering back and forth about who was dumb enough to give up who's the one that made the mistake that got them all caught. And of course, they decide to talk to the police without a lawyer. Brilliant move. And then, of course, here you have the most damaged one, the ball cutter herself, who cut the guy's nuts off with a steak knife. How nice. Explaining that she's not to blame because her teacher, well, he had statutorily raped her. He had consensual sex with her, but she was only 16. Ooh, big crime, yeah. And so she had every right to cut his balls off. Right. By the way, she had consensual sex with him at the age of 16, and it was a relationship she broke off because she found out that he was banging other students. Oh my. Yes, she had such good reason to cut his balls off. But of course, there's a limit on how long you can wait before you can convict somebody. So the statute of limitations had expired on statutory rape. 20 years. 20 years this chick had to get over it. But of course she chose to remain a victim and be angry instead of get over it. And so she chopped off some guy's balls and justifies it by saying, well, he victimized me. Typical woman. But then she makes up some cock and bull story that we're supposed to believe because always believe her, right? So she can get her final revenge and not be the only one who's going down for the crime. And she says, the last time he had sex with me, it wasn't consensual. He actually raped me by using a corkscrew to threaten me. No evidence. Just her word from 20 years ago, the word of somebody who's already a liar, who's already been proven to be a liar, who chopped off some guy's balls and has done everything she could to obstruct the investigation. And now we're supposed to believe that lots and lots of consensual sex, which can't be prosecuted, ended with one episode of non-consensual sex, and there's no statute of limitations on first-degree rape. So now the poor guy who's had his balls cut off can be prosecuted for rape in addition to having his balls cut off. Because, oh boy, don't you know those scales aren't balanced until the man is buried 6 feet under. And fast forwarding, we just simply see a lot of scenes of all three of these women crying and boo-hooing because their lives have been ruined because they've chosen not to move past what were essentially consensual encounters. And they were all such blubbering heaps of goo who essentially just can't get past it. Okay. Yeah, more tears from the ladies. Yes, we need to feel sympathy. We need to empathize. We need to feel pain for the women. Because don't you know, women are always victims even when they're chopping off people's balls. More and more cut scenes. It seems like every goddamn scene has these broads in it crying. I'm still fast forwarding and I can only see pictures of these broads crying. This is 2 minutes later and still crying. Okay. And here, of course, we have big fat Mariska Hargitay, disgusting blob. Used to be a hot chick, but of course now is a single mother, don't you know? And she fits the mold perfectly. Discussing how we can get this son of a bitch who had his balls cut off for rape one from 20 years ago, even though the only thing we have is the word of a proven liar who cut the guy's balls off because she wanted revenge, and she's already admitted that it was all consensual. And then sometime after the fact that she admitted she cut his balls off and it was all consensual, she comes up with this rape one thing that doesn't have a statute of limitations. Methinks the always believe her narrative, even when she's a proven liar who's a ball chopper, is coming to the fore here.
But that he committed a Packard are now.
And here we have Mariska Hargitay, who is just one giant walking vagina, is telling the perpetrator, oh no, the victim, even though she cut somebody's balls off, that we're going to get him. We're going to get him because he's a man, goddammit, and he did something at some time, a long time ago, maybe, because you say he did. And, even though you're a proven liar and a ball chopper, I believe you because I always believe everyone that has a vagina, don't you know? Even if they're a proven liar, because vagina means 100% truth teller. So, let's review to this point, shall we? 3 supposed perpetrators, 2 of them, the accessories, were just there to talk to the guy. They were just going to talk to the guy, essentially. And the guy, he blamed them. It was your fault. You seduced me, they say. He said. We don't know if he actually said that. And then one of them got angry and doped the guy with some pills in her bag. And while he was unconscious, she cut his balls off. And the other 2 ran out of the room, if you're to believe these women. And then the one who felt guilty called the cops. And then she said, I was there to meet a friend. And then they talked to the friend and said, I lost my credit card that I used to rent the room. And then that connected them to the other friend who paid for a bar bill with a credit card, you dummy, you. And she's the ball chopper. Now the ball chopper says, I think, I haven't gotten back at him enough, and I really have to make him look more guilty so I can essentially minimize my own guilt and maybe get a better deal. So I'm going to say that he raped me in the first degree, and there's no statute of limitations on that, and it makes me look like more of a victim, and it gives me more cause to chop off his balls. That's my take. So let us see how things unfurl, as if we need to be told. We already know how things are going to unfurl. The guy, of course, is going to be found guilty and punished even more, of course, because men are always guilty, and they must be not only punished, but destroyed. And here, of course, we have more tears. I think if you added up all the time that women cry on this show, it would be about half the episode. And here the police are at the house of the guy who's had his balls cut off. And they're there, of course, to arrest him because, you know, having his balls chopped off, he hasn't quite been punished enough. And he hasn't been punished in the eyes of the law. Yeah, he's been punished enough, really, even if he did rape some chick in the first degree, and it wasn't just statutory rape, but all we have is her word, a liar and proven ball chopper and proven liar who has it in her best interest to lie to mitigate her own guilt. But hey, let's just believe her when the proven lying ball chopper obstructor of justice says, oh, no, he committed first-degree rape, which has no statute of limitations. Very convenient. So let's arrest this guy. Yes, and let's clamp him in irons and walk him out of the building, even though he's had his balls chopped off and he can barely walk. And there's his young wife there protesting. Yes, the obligatory perp walk. And, of course, all the feminists are clapping. Yeah, you get that evil male out of there. He's such a scumbag piece of crap. Oh, get him out of there. His balls were cut off, but that's not enough. It's not enough. The whole world has to know how evil men are. More tears from the woman who chopped off a man's balls, even though the only thing we know to be true is that she had consensual sex with him at the age of 16. Not like 12 or 13, 16. And here she is again on the stand giving testimony against the man whose balls she chopped off, because the only thing he did that we know for sure is had consensual sex with her when she was the age of 16 and he was the age of 22, 23 or something like that. Yeah, he's so evil. Oh, you evil bastard, you. He ruined me for life. Yeah, honey, that's your choice, huh? You ever think that you could get past this stuff and get over it? Oh, no, I have to dwell on it forever so I can be a victim until I die. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. And, of course, a cutscene to the two accessories, these horribly maimed victims who had consensual sex with a man slightly older than they were when they were 16 years of age. Consensual sex, yeah. Boy, they've been damaged for life. Oh, horrible, just horrible. Of course, you never hear this kind of outrage when a boy at the age of 16 is raped by a female teacher. And there's that evil, horrible man. He's so evil. He's so horrible. Oh, kill him. Lynch him. Lynch him. Good Lord. Are there any, good Lord, are there any white people in positions of authority on this show other than the woman lieutenant played by big fat land whale Mariska Hargitay? What is this? So now we have a black female kinky-haired judge, black doctor, female boss of the unit. Boy, this is amazing, isn't it? All the men in positions of authority are gone. How interesting. And remember the last boss, it was a bald, old white dude. He had to go, of course. More tears, of course, because don't you know women are weak, pathetic. Victims are always crying, even though they're strong and independent. Ew. And we have the ball chopper slumped over here, feigning tears. You wouldn't believe that she was strong enough to take a steak knife to an unconscious man that she drugged and knocked out and chop his balls off. Let's feel sorry for her. And cut to the office scene where the case isn't going so well. And they're trying to figure out how to get this guy with his balls cut off. We have no actual evidence he raped anybody. It's a he said, she said. And the she said is someone who chopped off this guy's balls and is a proven liar. How's that evidence? Where's the evidence for this? Oh, he's a guy and she's a girl and she has a vagina, so that's all the evidence we need. They're trying to figure out how to get him. How can we shore up this case and get him? And, of course, in walks the disloyal wife with some evidence to prove the husband's guilt because she suddenly realized, oh, he must be guilty. He must be guilty. And I know he must be guilty now because I have a shell, a seashell, and a poem with the word corkscrew in it. And, oh, the woman who says she was raped used the word corkscrew in her testimony. She said he used a corkscrew to rape her. And this is an old poem from his literature class that she was in back in 95 or 96 or something. So, and she said she had a seashell too. So, oh my, I have a seashell. She has a seashell. So he must have raped her. That's de facto evidence. Ooh, boy. And, of course, you have the obligatory scene of the supposed victim who is actually supposed to be the perpetrator, but she's really the victim because she forced his hand. He made that woman cut his balls off, and she's there, of course, crying. This whole goddamn show is women crying and men are responsible for it. And here comes Barba, that Cuban refugee genius lawyer with the evidence of the poetry journal from when the teacher, horrible man / accused rapist was a teacher. And this girl, the one who cut his balls off, supposedly wrote a poem with the word corkscrew in it at some point. So, she used the word corkscrew today in court, and it's in a poem she wrote 20 years ago. So that must mean he raped her. What? Doesn't make any sense. Just because she uses the word now and she used it back then, there's no correlation that proves rape, just that she's trying to take a story, a poem she wrote 20 years ago, and use that to tie her rape allegations to a poem and somehow bolster her story of him raping her. But that's definitive evidence. He raped her. He must have, because the word corkscrew's in there, and she said that he used a corkscrew on her to force her to have sex with him. That's not evidence of any kind. But here comes Barber. Read this poem. And he reads it, and he says the word corkscrew, and he's like, whatever. So what? It's not evidence of anything. And Barber hands him the poem, and he looks at his wife, knowing, you must have given him this. What the hell? I thought you were my wife. Boy, some loyalty you have. And then you have his wife looking at him with this just blank face. Ooh, you liar. I know you're guilty. I know you're guilty because, you're a man. How dare you lie to me? I know you're guilty, you evil man, you. And then he reads the poem, and of course you have the supposed victim here, who's a ball chopper and a proven liar with this vindicated look on her face like, I got you. Well, didn't you already get him by cutting his balls off? Nah, that's not enough. He needs to be buried 6 feet under the building, too. So, reads the poem, corkscrew. She just used the word corkscrew the other day in court and said he used a corkscrew to rape her. And my belief is that she did that because she knew the poem she wrote all that long ago, and she just decided to use the word corkscrew from that to try and tie somehow something together. I don't know how a poem, and it didn't mention anything about raping or anything. That was a very vague poem. She just had the word corkscrew in it, and she tried to use that as some kind of way to tie together nothing except writing a poem for 20 years ago and say that that's proof of him raping her. Utter nonsense. But of course we have to believe her because she's a woman. And here we have his very bad lawyer totally playing into the idea that he actually did rape her in the first degree. She's just admitting that. She's giving that up. And her argument is that, how much retribution should a victim get against their perpetrator? How much punishment does a perpetrator deserve before he's been punished enough? No, she doesn't even argue the fact that there's no evidence. There's really no evidence. There's just some friggin' poem from 20 years ago that had the word corkscrew in it, and this broad used the word corkscrew on the stand to say, he raped me with a corkscrew. He used it as a weapon to force me the last time I saw him because I found out he was sleeping with other girls, so I wanted to break up with him. Yeah, sounds a lot like rape to me, yeah. And the last time he had sex with me, he forced me, and he used a corkscrew. We have no evidence of that. Just her using the word corkscrew. And this dumb broad is playing into it instead of arguing that there is no evidence, and there is no evidence. And then we have the Superman, Barba, who on the fly has decided to throw away his initial closing statement and go for the jugular with a brilliant argument that he hadn't formally thought of. Just came to him on the fly. Members of the jury, he's a man. And he's a rapist. And we know he's a rapist. So it doesn't matter if he says balls cut off. We have to follow the law. And the law says he needs to go to jail forever. Because he's a man. If I had some long, oily mustaches, I would be twisting them right now. I am a white knight pussycock. Convict him. Convict him. And in short order, after Barba has finished his musical performance, the verdict comes back from the jury, as usual on a folded small white piece of paper, of course. And we all know what the verdict will be beforehand because he is a man, don't you know? And the man is always guilty. Guilty! Off with his head! Oh, okay, off with his balls! Oh, that's already been done. Oh, that's not enough. Now we need to throw him in jail, too. Guilty! Guilty! You are guilty for being a man, you know, son of a bitch. God damn you. You're a man. And, of course, we see the shock on his face. I don't know why he's shocked. It was pretty obvious to me that he would be fried. I knew that he was the perpetrator the moment he was found in the hallway with blood covering his pants and his balls cut off, because there is no way the man is ever the victim. He is always the perpetrator, even when he is the victim. And that is the moral of this story, people. And the shock, of course, begins to set in that he's going to spend the next 10 to 150 years in jail. Oh, I'm so happy. Not only did I get to chop his balls off, but I'm going to get off with a slap on the wrist myself, and he's going to spend forever in jail. Oh, wonderful. And, of course, you have Mariska there comforting the poor victim, ball chopper, proven liar. So, what's the moral of this story, folks? Well, the moral is if you're a man, you're screwed. You are screwed. You're always the evil bad guy, even when you are the victim. A man cannot be the victim. He can never be the victim. He is always the perpetrator. Anything and everything that happens to him is his fault because he's an evil oppressor, and he has all of it coming to him. I am the MGTOW philosopher, and I wish you a good day. Take care.